Hello, this is day 51 of reading one canto of the Divine Comedy every single day. We are on Purgatorio, Canto 17, which I will read from the Longfellow translation before giving some brief analysis. Remember, reader, if ever in the Alps a mist overtook thee, through which thou couldst see, not otherwise than through its membrane mole, how, when the vapors, humid and condensed, began to dissipate themselves, the sphere of the sun feebly enters in among them, and thy imagination will be swift in coming to perceive how I resaw the sun at first, that was already setting. Thus, to the faithful footsteps of my master mating mine own, I issued from that cloud to raise already dead on the low shores. O thou, imagination, that dost steal us so, from without sometimes, that man perceives not, although around may sound 1,000 trumpets, who moveth thee, if sense impel thee not? Moves thee a light, which in the heaven takes form, by self, or by a will that downward guides it. Of her impiety, who changed her form into the bird that most delights in singing, in my imagining appeared the trace. And hereupon my mind was so withdrawn within itself, that from without there came nothing that then might be received by it. Then reigned within my lofty fantasy one crucified, disdainful and ferocious in countenance, and even thus was dying. Around him were the great Anaxerxes, Esther his wife, and the just Mordecai, who was in word and action so entire. And even as this image burst asunder of its own self, in fashion of a bubble in which the water is made of fails, there rose up in my vision a young maiden bitterly weeping, and she said, O Queen, why hast thou wished in anger to be naught? Thou hast slain thyself, Lavinia not to lose, now hast thou lost me. I am she who mourns, mother, at thine heir at another's ruin. As sleep is broken, when upon a sudden new light strikes in upon the eyelids closed, and broken quivers ere it dieth wholly, so this imagining of mine fell down as soon as the effulgence smote my face, greater by far than what it is in our wont. I turned me round to see where I might be, when said a voice, Here is the passage up, which from all other purposes removed me, and made my wish so full of eagerness to look and see who was it that was speaking. It never rests till meeting face to face. But as before the sun, which quells the sight, and in its own excess its figure veils, even so my power was insufficient here. This is a spirit divine, who in the way of going up directs us without asking, and who with his own light himself conceals. He does with us as man doth with himself, for he who sees the need and waits the asking, malignly leans already towards denial. Accord we now our feet to such inviting, let us make haste to mount ere it grow dark, for then we could not till the day return. Thus my conductor said, and I and he together turned our footsteps to a stairway, and I, as soon as the first step I reached, near me perceived a motion as of wings, and fanning in the face, and saying, Beati pacifici, who are without ill anger. Already over us were so uplifted the latest sunbeams, which the night pursues, that upon many sides the stars appeared. O manhood mine, why dost thou vanish so? I said within myself, for I perceived the vigor of my legs was put in truce. We at the point were where no more ascends the stairway upward, and were motionless even as a ship, which at the shore arrives. And I gave heed a little, if I might hear aught whatsoever in the circle new. Then to my master turned me round and said, Say, my sweet father, what delinquency is purged here in the circle where we are? Although our feet may pause not thy speech. And he to me, The love of good, remiss in what it should have done, is here restored. Here plied again the ill-belated oar. But still more openly to understand, turn unto me thy mind, and thou shalt gather some profitable fruit from our delay. Neither creator nor a creature ever, son, he began, was destitute of love natural or spiritual, and thou knowest it. The natural was ever without error, but ere the other may, by evil object, or by too much, or by too little vigor. While in the first it well directed is, and in the second moderates itself, it cannot be the cause of sinful pleasure. But when to ill it turns, and, with more care, or lesser than it ought, runs after good, against the Creator works his own creation. Hence thou mayest comprehend that love must be the seed within yourselves of every virtue, and every act that merits punishment. Now, inasmuch as never from the welfare of its own subject can love turn its sight, from their own hatred all things are secure. And since we cannot think of any being standing alone, nor from the first divided, of hating him is all desire cut off. Hence, if discriminating I judge well, the evil that one loves is of one's neighbor, and this is born in 3 modes in your clay. There are who, by abasement of their neighbor, hope to excel, and therefore only long that from his greatness he may be cast down. There are who power, grace, honor, and renown fear they may lose because another rises, thence are so sad that the reverse they love. And there are those whom injury seems to chafe, so that it makes them greedy for revenge, and such must needs shape out another's harm. This threefold love is wept for down below. Now of the other will I have thee here, that runneth after good with measure faulty. Each one confusedly a good conceives, wherein the mind may rest, and longeth for it, therefore to overtake it each one strives. If languid love to look on this attract you, or in attaining unto it, this cornice, after just penitence, torments you for it, there's other good that does not make man happy. 'Tis not felicity, 'tis not the good essence, of every good the fruit and root. The love that yields itself too much to this above us is lamented in 3 circles, but how tripartite it may be described. I say not that thou seek it for thyself. So, I didn't get a chance to say last canto that we are now on the terrace of the wrathful, or at least we were on the terrace of the wrathful. The counter example is meekness, which is why the angel says in this canto, "Blessed are the meek," that's what the Latin means, as it erases that particular mark from Dante's forehead. But then they move on to the terrace of the slothful, which I find ironic because it's the angel that guards the way to the terrace of the slothful that Virgil almost accuses of being slothful. Here, let me show it to you. "This is an angel of the Lord who comes to show us the ascent before we ask, and hides himself in his own radiance. He treats us as a man would treat himself, who sees the need but waits for the request, already is half guilty of denial." And that is one sense of what being slothful means. It means to see the good, to see the need for it, to see what you're supposed to be doing, and be kind of laggard, slow in doing it. In the Inferno, when we did that, I had also defined it as failing to be gladdened at the good. That is also true. Probably the simplest way to put it is choosing to run after the good with deficient ardor, with deficient vigor. But anyways, the bulk of this chapter is taken up by Virgil talking about love. Dante asks him, what is love? And Virgil explains that there's 2 different kinds of love, the natural and the spiritual, or the rational, depending on your translation. And he says that the natural cannot err. Now, that doesn't mean that every single inclination that a person has is inherently good, and he explains that in the next canto. But it does mean that we are created to desire good things, and it is by our choices that we end up desiring that which is not so good, that we end up loving that which is evil. So, in this canto, in which Dante and Virgil are stuck sitting down in the terrace of the slothful because the sun has fallen down, it is night, and thus they cannot go any further. The strength literally leaves Dante's legs, and he has to sit down. We see in this discussion of exactly how love can go wrong another echo of free will. But also, if you think back to not just this canto, but the one before it and the one before that, together, we can say that they form the center of the comedy. You have one canto about free will, and then one on each side that's about love. One, how good love can be, and how it leads us onward and upward to heaven where there's overabundance of good and love. And the other, on how love can go wrong, and how it can lead somebody astray to loving what is evil and bring you down. These 3 that form the center of the Divine Comedy, not just in terms of where they're placed, but also in terms of the themes and the ideas. They form the central message of what Dante wishes to impart to us through this great work. That's all for today. I'll see you tomorrow.